A special meeting of the City of Ashland Planning Commission to order for May 13th, 2025. The Planning Commission is conducting in-person regular meetings. However, the ability to participate electronically is continuing. These meetings are via Zoom pursuant to state law. The public can find information on how to participate in Planning Commission meetings in our public notices. Directions on how to find the full meeting materials, applications, and staff reports on the city's website are also included in our public notices. I note that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 members present and 1 member is absent, so we do have a quorum. First of all, I'd like to, and under announcements, first of all, I'd like to give congratulations to Michael on his upcoming marriage. And Brandon, do you have any staff reports?
I do have some announcements to note. On May 20th, the City Council is going to be reviewing the request for a map modification correction for Hamilton Creek. Additionally, at that meeting, they'll be addressing the second reading of the climate-friendly area. They did have first reading at their most recent meeting and did approve the climate-friendly area will be coming back to them on June 3rd. They approved first reading at their last meeting. I wanted to note for the commission that 231 Granite Street has been appealed. We received an appeal, and that will be going to the City Council for the hillside development of the single-family home, and that'll go to Council on June 17th. And on the lighter side, I also wanted to note that the Public Arts Advisory Committee has issued a call for artists for 3 utility boxes to be painted. And so that is posted on our website for anyone listening that might be interested, and the close date on that is on June 23rd. We also issued a request for proposals for the development of 6 lots within the Beach Creek subdivision that are to be dedicated as affordable housing. And again, that is located on the website, and my understanding most affordable housing providers are aware of that release of the request for proposals. And lastly, we're moving into Historic Preservation Week, and I'm going to turn it over to Derek as the liaison to that committee to announce some of the events.
Okay. Tomorrow afternoon, May 14th from 2 to 4 at Ashland Cemetery, Tombstone Tales is happening, which is some actors from the Commission and from Southern Oregon Historical Society will be portraying residents of the cemetery and talking about their lives as historic figures from 2 to 4 tomorrow, Ashland Cemetery behind Safeway. On Wednesday, we are having a historic photo contest, and candidates to be judged will be available at a booth on the plaza from 3 to 5. On May 15th, that's Thursday, self-guided tours of the Ashland Memorial Mausoleum at Mountain View Cemetery all day on Friday the 16th. And then our Historic Preservation Annual Award Ceremony will be in Lithia Park at the band shell from 2 to 4 on Saturday. And the mayor and Historic Preservation Advisory Committee members will be there to present awards to recent projects in the historic districts.
Wow, full calendar. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. I will note that we do need to change the meeting date on the joint study session. It should be April 22nd, not February 25th. Russell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Werner. I think we need to change the dates on both of the consent agenda minutes, potentially.
Why?
I think they're both the wrong date.
What would be the right date?
So the study session, I believe, it was actually April 22nd as well. Okay, that one's correct then.
Okay, okay. Yeah, they're both on the same night. Would somebody like to entertain a motion, like to present a motion to approve the consent agenda with my noted change?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with Chair Werner's recommended changes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passed. Public forum. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak to the Planning Commission on something that's not on their agenda? Okay, seeing no one, we will move on. We have a type 3 public hearing before us. This is a type 3 public hearing. Type 3 legislation is a legislative action with a public hearing before the Planning Commission, after which the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision. This hearing is on PT-T3-2024-00011, a request for annexation of 8.53 acres into the City of Ashland, along with 6.6 acres of adjacent ODOT State Highway right-of-way and 7.6 acres of California, Oregon, and Pacific/Genesee-Wyoming Railroad Company railroad property. Also, the applicant is requesting a performance standards option outline and final plan subdivision to to create 9 lots. Site design review to construct 210 apartments in 10 buildings, including 24 affordable units, and exception to site design and site development and design standards, exception to street design standards, and an exception to phasing requirements for affordable housing. The site is at 1511 Highway 99 North. The applicant is Casita Development LLC and Kendrick Enterprises LLC. The property owner is Linda Zaire. The comprehensive plan designation is multifamily residential. The proposed zoning is City R-2 low-density multifamily residential. The current zoning in the county is RR-5 rural residential. And the map is 38-1E32, tax lot 1702. And before I open the public hearing, I'll ask commissioners if they've had any ex parte contact or done a site visit. Commissioner Herron?
I have done a site visit, no ex parte.
Commissioner McCracken Jen?
No site visit, no ex parte.
Commissioner Marr?
No site visit, no ex parte.
Commissioner Perkinson? Commissioner Phillips?
No ex parte, and I have done a site visit.
And I have not had ex parte contact, but did a site visit the last time this was here. So I'm not aware of any challenges for bias, prejudgment, or personal interest. I will now open the public hearing and acknowledge 2 public comments received from Brent Thompson and Streets for Everyone, one in the packet and the other emailed to us yesterday. Staff report. Aaron, are you on deck?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair Werner and Planning Commission. Pleasure to be before you again. My name is Aaron Anderson. I'm a senior planner in the Community Development Department. The slide before you basically has everything that you just set out, and I won't repeat it for brevity's sake. It is an annexation and zone change, including outline and final plan approval for subdivision and site design review approval with the details that you just spelled out, including the exceptions. The staff report has a detailed background. I won't go through all of it, but in short, this application has been before the Planning Commission and approved through City Council twice and Toluba twice. And this is substantially similar to the previous application, although there are some differences. This is the locator of the city, and the yellow arrow in the northwest corner is the project site. This is a closer-up view of the 2 subject properties. This is tax lot 1700 and 1702. There is a property line adjustment that is proposed that is not reflected here, that is showing the current state of the property. And this is with the comp plan designations, and so you can see it's zoned, or pardon me, has a comp plan designation of multifamily family residential, which would be appropriate to receive an urban zoning of R2. This is been included with the application materials for a property line adjustment that the applicant has proposed. We understand that he has begun that application process with the county, and I believe he'll be able to speak to it further when he presents. This is the aerial view of the subject property. You can see it's vacant land between the railroad tracks and the highway. And this is the area of land that's proposed to be annexed. There is one issue that will need to be addressed that only just became aware of in the last few days, and that's that this property here that has Anderson Auto Body, they have fee ownership into what appears to be the right-of-way, and so this will need to be slightly modified so we aren't annexing any of that property. This is the proposed subdivision plat. There are 9 lots in one open space area. These 2 buildings will sit on one combined lot. It's connected right there. And then this is the overall of the site design, showing the parking areas with the 2 main access points. This one here through an easement, and this one here directly to the highway. This is a known wetland that has not yet been delineated, but all the plans indicate a 20-foot buffer from the study that has been done, and this is additional storm drain facilities here. This line right here is the actual right-of-way and property line, and I just wanted to point out there's quite a bit of distance that's in the right-of-way from the actual roadway and the proposed improvements. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, this map does not show that Anderson Auto extension into the right-of-way?
It does not, no.
Okay.
Now, there's a number of different numbers here, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. At its most base, the calculated base density for R2 is done by number of dwellings per acre with the project size, and that density, the base density is 115. And there's going to be a lot of discussion here about the 500 square foot threshold, and it's important for 2 different reasons. One is that when you have a unit that is 499 square feet, it only counts as 0.75 for the sake of density. But this application also has affordable housing, and affordable housing requires that those units be at least 500 square foot for 1-bedroom apartments. All of the apartments in this application are proposed to be 1-bedroom. So in terms of that calculated density, when you take the number of units that are proposed at the 0.75 density and the 50 units that are greater than 500 square feet, all of the units on the first floor are 580 square feet roughly. You have 210 apartments, but a calculated density of 170. Now, 170 is in excess of the base density, but there are ways to get density bonuses that are discussed later in the presentation. With regard to affordable housing, the calculations are as follows. The base density times 25% is the required number of affordable units, so in this case, 29. But in the present application, they propose to provide them for households that are earning 80% of the area median income or less. So those have an equivalency value of 1.25. And so that equation takes the required number of units, which is 29, divided by that equivalency value, and that comes to 24 affordable units for 80% AMI. As far as the annexation goes, these are the relevant approval criteria. The staff report steps through each of them individually. Here, I'm really going to focus on 2 main ones. Again, this is the map of that annexation area, including the associated right-of-ways and the subject property after the property line adjustment. The 2 approval criteria that I want to dive into a little bit further are the ones that deal with transportation and the ones that deal with affordable housing requirements and the related standards. In the previous appeal, one of the issues that was litigated was the standards for E2 and E3, which deal with safe pedestrian access for bikes and pedestrians. In that ruling, they leaned very hard into a letter from ODOT that basically said it met their standards pursuant to certain conditions. While it's not in your packet, we did receive this yesterday from ODOT indicating that they support the proposal with conditions that are described in that letter, and it has some few details about certain engineering items that need to be worked out before permit issuance. But support the application. And this letter is basically the exact same format as the one that's cited in the Luba ruling, stating that the approval was meeting those standards. This is from the pedestrian plan in the landscaping package, and it shows that the sidewalk is to be installed from the extent of the application all the way up past the train trestle to where the crosswalk is proposed to be. And this is, again, all of these frontage improvements, including the bike pullout, et cetera. These are all basically identical to the 2022 approval. With regards to the affordable housing, we already covered the numbers. I won't drive through that again, but there is an issue with phasing. Our standards for phasing require that prior to the issuance of a building permit for the final 10% of the market rate units, the final 50% of the affordable units shall have received certificate of occupancy. In the present application, the applicant wants to have affordable units spread throughout all 10 buildings. And so by virtue of having the affordable housing spread throughout all of the buildings, it makes it virtually impossible to meet this standard. And so the applicant has provided this spreadsheet indicating that all of the buildings will have at least 2 affordable units, and that buildings 3 and 4 and buildings 7 and 8 will each have 3. And so now that we have all of that dialed in, we'll be able to craft a condition of approval so that when the plat is recorded, those deed restrictions for each lot will be able to be written.
Was that also a recommendation from one of the planning commissioners to have those spread out in between the units, right? And then I think the applicant complied with that. Is that the correct history of that?
Please go.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I think obviously the prior application is no longer relevant as this, but you are absolutely correct that the intention in our prior review was to have a distribution, to have mixed income units throughout the development, which is part of the current proposal.
Just wanted to check to make sure I was reading this right on page 29. It says that there are 5 apartments per building that qualify for affordable housing for a total of 50 units within the development, of which 24 apparently will be designated as affordable housing, but there is a degree of flexibility there. It seems to me, if there are 50 that are applicable, I'm just trying to understand the puts and takes there, because they aren't being, as I understand, there will be other ones available. They aren't being built separately in a separate building with separate materials or separate sizes and things like that, that would limit the ability in the future to make sure that the 25% are there, ultimately.
Yes, and through this table, we'll be able to craft those deed restrictions for each lot. And when I get to the site design review portion and we're looking at the floor plans, we'll be able to discuss the details of exactly which units will be affordable a little better. Is that all right?
So Aaron, you're saying that the applicant was not committal before, but has now committed to these particular units in these particular buildings?
The applicant has been consistent that the affordable units will be spread throughout all of the buildings.
Which
This
is good.
spreadsheet wasn't a part of the original application materials, but we asked for him to provide it because there was a question of, sure, they're being spread out, but exactly which buildings are having 2 and which buildings are having 3. And so now that we have this in the record, again, as the plat gets recorded, those deed restrictions will be able to be agreed to.
And what Aaron's referring to is part of our affordable housing program. Any required affordable housing unit has a deed restriction that is recorded, so we will need to know the precise unit because it triggers income qualification based on that address. The applicant is on Zoom, so he may be able to speak to the intention. We will have to nail that down in terms of which units specifically are affordable, both in meeting the 500 square foot standard, which that table does, and the deed restrictions that get recorded on each of those lots that contains the affordable housing units.
Chair, I think Russell's trying to
Oh,
simulate.
sorry.
Just real quick, Aaron, back to the ODOT conditions, will those be included as conditions of approval for the applicant?
Yeah, there are conditions of approval that they're required to meet all of ODOT's final engineering standards, et cetera.
Great, thanks, Aaron.
Yep. May I continue?
Yes, please do.
So that covers annexation. If there are additional questions about any of the other approval criteria, we can discuss them in detail. Now we're moving on to the outline plan approval for the subdivision. Again, this is the proposed plat. There are 10 buildings, but again, this lot here is proposed to actually have 2 different buildings connected through this portion here, and then there's 1 open space area. So for a moment, I want to talk about density bonuses, which the project leverages. There are the ability to earn bonuses through conservation housing, open space, and affordable housing. In the present application, they need basically just under 50% of density bonus. So for the purposes of the analysis, I addressed the conservation housing and the affordable housing bonuses. And with those 2 combined, it's eligible for 50% bonus, which exceeds what is required based on the math that's there. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions about density and density bonuses before I move on. And if there's not any. The project also does require an exception to the street standards. There's a couple of portions here where the sidewalk is proposed to be curb tight, and there's also the bus pull-out lane, which because there's a pull-out lane, there's not a park row, and so both of those require street exceptions, and that has been addressed in the staff report, and we're supportive of them. And then moving on to site design review, the approval criteria for site design review are pretty simple in terms of each one is, does the project comply with 18.2, 18.3, 18.4, and so on, and then whether there's any exceptions. And there's one exception here that deals with parking. We'll get to that in a moment. This is from the application landscape plan. Again, this is the wetland that's been identified by their consultant. It has not yet been delineated by the state, but that is included as a conditional of approval. And then these are the elevation drawings for the buildings. This is the front side and then the larger downhill side. The floor plans for the first floor show 3 apartments each. These are a little over 580 square foot each. This will come back to the square footage thing and identifying which ones are the affordability. And then floors 2 and floors 3 are identical. This is a slightly zoomed in, and I hope you can see the notations here. Unit 17 in the middle and Unit 18 Unit 8 directly below it, both have a single entryway. And all of the apartments on all of the other entryways have an entry that's shown to be 5'10". This one has been reduced to be 5'8", which brings it, units 8 and 17, just over 500 square feet. So basically floors 2 and 3 each have 1 unit, it's the center unit, that is over 500 square feet and qualifies for affordable units, and all of the others on the floor, by having a slightly different entry size, are under the 500 square foot threshold for the 0.75 density calculation. As it relates to exceptions to the to the design standards, there's a prohibition on having parking between the buildings and the street. In this case, this parking area here between these 2 buildings is technically between the street and the buildings, but there's a considerable change in grade, and this is quite far actually from the road. I believe it's over 100 feet. And based on the site layout, staff believe that the exception is reasonable and support it. So in conclusion, staff recommend that the Planning Commission make a favorable recommendation to the City Council with regards to the annexation and conditionally approve outline and final plan approval of the PSO subdivision and site design review with the requested exceptions. I'm more than happy to take any questions that you guys have.
Anybody have any questions for staff? You did a thorough job and there are no questions.
Thank you.
Actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
This might be a naive question, but it's a question nonetheless. So obviously, this is not the first development that has been proposed along the railroad track. Are there like special design considerations that developers use to mitigate potential issues with development along the railroad track? I mean, are
There's
there-
nothing in the land use code that addresses development adjacent to railroad right-of-ways specifically.
So the city doesn't have any additional noise abatement standards or anything like that?
No, the only experience I have from the city side is when community development block grants or federal funding is being utilized in support of affordable housing, there are noise attenuation requirements that come with that. But again, that's outside the scope of the city's review and more of a HUD requirement for the use of those fundings.
And the only other one I've had experience with is if it's built right up against if a building's built right up against the railroad property, there's certain fire ratings on that building, but we're not there.
Correct, yeah, so, and that's true whenever you're built immediately adjacent to a shared property line, be it railroad property or neighboring residential. If you're built right on the property line, you can't have windows, you have to have firewall rating, and that falls under building code. But these are set downhill from the railroad tracks, well beyond the minimum 3-foot requirement.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, Aaron. Just a quick question about the fire access road width. I noticed that due to the height of the buildings, that we should have a minimum width of 26 feet in front of all the buildings, and the access drive C and D, I wasn't sure on the width of those according to the civil engineer drawings.
Yeah, I appreciated your question. Actually got a chance to speak to the fire marshal about the plan today. One of the issues that's propped up with this application is that there's been a lot of reliance on the previous 2022 approval, that certain things weren't looked at again, and the current fire marshal had not, in fact, looked at these plans. I communicated with him, and indeed, they do need to be 26. We're going to include a condition of approval to modify that. Communicated with the engineer on the project, and he said that being able to widen those out to meet the 26-foot standard was not going to be a problem.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kendrick, would you like to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
There's got to be a change in the
Vaguely.
sound.
Is there a way to turn up the volume?
I believe it's on our end, Mr. Kendrick.
We're trying to get it to come out of the correct speaker, Bob.
Your audio is fine on my end.
I don't know where to change this.
Put that to where the speaker is down there.
You think? Speaker. Bob, can you try to talk one more time?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, much better. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good evening. This application is for the development of 210 multifamily apartments consisting of 10 buildings with 21 one-bedrooms each on 8.53 acres. The land is in the urban growth boundary immediate to the entry of the city on Highway 99 with 900 feet of frontage. There is an indentured access driveway that will be relocated and used for the main driveway. Secondary emergency access is about 1,000 feet to the north. 10 chapters of the land use ordinance are applicable, and their criteria is met in the application letter and all the attachments. The application consists of 3 requests for exceptions. One is to the annexation ordinance, the site design review ordinance, and the street standard ordinance. For annexations, the ordinance requires the applicant to pick a process for which the land is to be annexed. ORS 222170 stipulates when more than half of the owners in the annexed area consent, and they represent more than half of the land and the assessed value to be annexed, to be annexed, the requirement for the annexation is satisfied. The applicant, ODOT, and the railroad are all included, and the majority has been met. And the standard of ORS 222170 has also been met. The annexation approval criteria call for an orderly expansion of the city and include public facilities, connectivity through transportation services of walking, biking, driving, and mass transit. Site design review, meet the density of the minimum requirement, at least 90%. Also, to provide 25% of that density to affordable units at 80% the area median income. All these are met. The first exception requested is to the distribution schedule and a certificate of occupancy process for the affordable units. An exception is allowed under the ordinance, and alternative phasing is permitted if requested, and there are adequate assurances the affordable units will be provided in a timely fashion. In the current ordinance state, the ordinance makes it impossible to both finance and spread the affordable units equally among all the buildings, and they would be spread out disproportionately. Certificates of occupancy issuance are granted when only over half of the buildings are completed, and financing for this amount is impossible. This creates too much risk for lending institutions. With the exception, the units can be equally distributed, and the occupancy permits would be released after each building is completed. This makes the delivery more timely. A delivery schedule was provided to staff demonstrating this process. I think you just saw it on that graph that I provided, and what Evan or Terry provided. Anyhow, the market affordable units are distributed equally throughout all the buildings of a mixture of 2 to 3 affordable units in each building. For site design review, on the site coverage of improvements, the improvements requirement is 52% and include buildings, 176 parking spaces, parkways, crosswalks, sidewalks, bike paths, 20 ADA spaces, and 75 EV charging stations. An exception to the site design standards is requested for the site for the parking spaces that sit between the buildings and the street at building number 1. They're only allowed between buildings and behind the building. The problem is with the wetlands setback lines and dedicated open spaces, they restrict the layout to the building and the parking area, and they can't be placed anywhere else. The car parking is over 200 feet from the street. The wetland and landscaping with numerous false trees sits between them, making it impossible to see the cars parked that far back. I think this meets the intent of the ordinance, which is to not view the cars. The exception is minor, considering the amount of open space and preservation of the wetlands that's being provided. For public facilities and street design standards, the application includes all public improvement services consisting of city water, city electric, fire hydrants, road, valley, stormwater, and sanitary systems. The use of RVSS is allowed through an interagency agreement created in the past. Multiple pedestrian transportation options of new sidewalks, crosswalks with rapid flashing beacons, multi-use paths, curbs, bus stops, transit plaza, street lighting are being proposed. Nearly a mile of pedestrian improvements, including overhead lighting, sidewalks, curbs, bike lanes, bus pull-out lanes, crosswalks, bus stop plaza are included in the all-site plans. The installation of many of these public improvements are in the right of way. But because there are geological restrictions like outcroppings and private property encroachments, the width is restricting the standards. So an exception is required here too. The exception to the street standards is allowed if there is a demonstrable difficulty in meeting the specific requirements due to a unique, unusual aspect of the site and its minimum necessary to alleviate the difficulty, and a design will result in superior transportation facilities and connectivity. These proposals are consistent with the purpose, intent, and background of the street design standards in subsection 18.4.6.040, which are based on safety. proposed improvements comply with the standards and specifications of the jurisdiction of the Oregon Department of Transportation. For parking and access and circulation, the plan includes ADA parking requirements, emergency vehicle lanes, loading areas, 2 dedicated van pool parking areas, sidewalks, covered bicycle parking, EV charging stations with future infrastructure for all, ADA compliant paths and multimodal paths for pedestrians and bikes. These go throughout the site, all connecting conveniently to a lit transit plaza and 3 bus stops. Also for e-bike parking charging outlets will be added. The area is designed to minimize the adverse environmental and microclimatic impacts, with over 50% of the parking surfaces and driving surfaces in light colored concrete, and 40% of the area is shaded in large trees. The areas include landscape medians and swales to divert water toward capture areas. The subdivision meets the controlled access standards, also which can be made from 2 access points. For connectivity, a continuous walkway system extends throughout the development site and into the neighborhoods. Nearly a mile of pedestrian improvements will be added to the off-site areas. At the south end near Schofield, where bus stops are, I will be installing crosswalks and an RFB. Rogue Valley Transit District and ODOT design new hardscape surfaces areas here for pedestrians, cyclists, handicapped pedestrians, and wheelchairs to safely and comfortably get on and off the bus and cross the street. Pedestrians will have full control of the crossing through the RFB. They can push the button and stop any cars. They push the button until the cars stop. For traffic safety, the traffic impact analysis conducted and approved by ODOT concludes cars and pedestrians are safe with the street design from the entrance of the development. Important to safety for cars and pedestrians are the cars, clear line of sight, safe stopping distance, and the reaction time. Just this past November and December of 2024, an updated report found a 20% reduction in traffic turns from and to the city at the intersection of Valley View Road and Highway 99. Also, traffic volume is down 5% over the last 5 years, and this was confirmed through some of the studies that ODOT has made in the immediate areas. The site includes direct, safe pedestrian avenues that are solid surfaced, well lit, and at nighttime, and all sidewalks and walkways in the parking areas are built with curbs that have a raised 6-inch curb. Under the performance standard option subdivision, an application for an outline plan and final plan are submitted for approval concurrently. The development has a subdivision of 9 lots. The criteria for submitting a concurrent outline plan and final plan is less than 10 lots. The application also follows a subdivision process for bonding, public improvements, and common area creation, where 8% is required. This plan has 50%. The existing features of open fields and wetlands are replicated with this amount of space. The site includes trees, landscape islands within the parking area where pedestrian walkways connect the apartment units to the site and open spaces. Parking area and site sidewalks and public pedestrian and transit improvements are all conveniently connected. The method of maintaining the common open spaces with CC&Rs. The density of the development conforms to the chapter of 18.39050. Density is restricted to the project acreage only, which is 8.53 acres, and provides a density of 115 units. For annexation qualifications, planning action is required for the entirety of the area, for the entirety of the development area, and this is met with the units on the 8.53 acres. The density bonus brings the allowed units amount up. The bonus is allowed under the annexation ordinance and increased through the incentives allocated to the buildings by the affordable housing added, the increased open space, and the conservation building needs. For street parking, the proposed development is improving streets controlled by the Oregon Department of Transportation on Highway 99, and parking is prohibited. Streets outside the city of Ashland's jurisdiction, such as ODOT, are not required to provide on-street parking when they are approved, if they are prohibited by the governing jurisdiction. For building placement and orientation and design, the purpose of this chapter is for development to enhance the environment by encouraging alternate modes of transportation, such as walking, bicycling, and transit, and to provide a safe and comfortable environment. This is done through the on and off site improvements already mentioned. For site safety, the design of Grand Terrace provides occupants a safe surveillance of the public spaces by easily having their eyes on the street via the numerous open view corridors from the units and the parking spaces, paths, and sidewalks. The preliminary plat approval, final plat is required if lots are sold. Here, they need financing, and finance is the same since it requires a title transfer. Under 18.39 performance standards option stipulates a final plat is required if they are sold. For landscaping, lighting, and screening, the minimum required is 8%, and the plan is twice that. Also, tree preservation, irrigation plan, and water conservation plan are included or designed in the plans. Recycling and refuse area are included in the plans. Outdoor lighting is throughout the development along with adequate screening by hedges and fencing. Community recreational areas include basketball courts, private seating, meeting areas, and private spaces. For open space, common open space requirement minimum is 35%, and the proposed is 59%. For private open space, required is 4%, this plan is 6%. Tree protection plan is included with the plans. The application was submitted October 2024, and city responses came shortly after. With regards to the plat map, a property line adjustment is needed, but was questionable as to whether it should be done before or if it would be automatic by the county. This was discussed with staff last year. It was only last week, a few hours before the application was posted online, that staff reached out and said the lot line adjustment should be done first. If the lot line adjustment is not done before the annexation map, it's recorded and we need more time, I would concur for a delay or scheduling hearing process to timely fix and process to completion of the lot line adjustment. The planning staff of the county basically said this was a slam dunk thing, but it may take 90 days. In the other case, I would suggest that a recordation and annexation map should not record until the preliminary map is recorded. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much. I have one question. So you were talking about all the street improvements on Highway 99, and are they going to be affected by what Aaron said was the extension of Anderson Auto into the right of way?
No, I think we planned around that old map.
Okay.
I think when we first started that, it was assumed that that was already sold. And I think the assumption right now that it isn't sold, but the design, I think, included a design outside that marked area. And I don't know what feedback you got from my surveyor today.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Susan?
You talked about this a little bit, I believe, but I would like to have greater clarity on the statement that appears on page 24 in our packet about the, 74, about the subject to financing and debt coverage ratio, the affordable units will be equally distributed to all the buildings, with the first affordable unit starting in the first building. So can you explain a little bit more about what that means? And how it would work in practicality?
You mean the distribution?
Just the statement. I'd like to make sure that I'm interpreting it correctly, because for example, it says, there's a contingency being stated here. And I would like to understand how that would work, and what might happen, for example, if the financing and debt coverage ratio made it difficult or impossible to distribute the affordable units among all of the buildings, just to take an extreme case.
I don't have that in front of me to get the context correct, but a debt coverage ratio is going to be basically the debt to income. So I may have been talking about if a building has too many affordable units, it could push the income level down that would affect the debt coverage ratio. So therefore, you want to reduce the amount of units that would do that.
Yeah, it's
So-
on page 12 in your submission, if that helps.
I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm remote.
Yeah, so I understand generally how that could work, but the first buildings are the ones that will go first and presumably have the number of affordable units that you're committing, because we're being asked to believe that the total number of units in the end will satisfy the requirement. So I'm just trying to understand the scenarios.
The chart that you have right now is one that was asked for me to show how they can be distributed equally. And that's what I've done. They're distributed equally between 2 and 3 units per building. Now, the way the ordinance is written, you can't do that. You would end up with a couple buildings, or particularly the last building would have none. So you'd be loading up some of the buildings with too many. But you'd have to send me that page so I can, I don't really understand what I can say to address that if I can't read it.
So,
And what's the concern? Maybe I can go there.
John, you want to make a comment?
yeah, I mean, if I could, in my experience, this is probably built into the covenant and your financing from the provider of either construction debt, well, actually probably perm debt. And so if it doesn't meet it, right, in the pro forma, then it's not viable. So it typically would implicate the closing of the financing. And so, I think it's important that it's said, but I do think it's a little redundant in this case. I think it was probably included just to be clear.
I don't know, it seems to me like it might be an out.
Are you looking?
That's my concern.
Are you looking-
I applaud, the distribution across the buildings. I think that's fabulous. And it just seems to me that this statement puts the plan subject to something that. Yeah.
Read that to me again. I feel a little bit defenseless here. Read that to me again.
I'm sorry, what was the last bit?
He wanted you
Could
to
you
read
read that
that
to me again?
paragraph again.
So it's your page 12, item number 3, exception to site design standards. And it talks about the 500 square foot units, 10 buildings. Subject to financing and the debt coverage ratio, the affordable units will be equally distributed to all of the buildings, with the first affordable unit starting in the first building. On average, there will be 2.4 units per building, or 2 to 3 units per building, as you showed in your table. Neither market units or affordable units will be discernible or built any differently than each other, except for the entrances. The criteria for affordable units meet the HUD standards outlined in the ordinance.
Okay. I still don't understand what the question is.
Is what you're trying to get at a commitment that the affordable units will get built?
That,
I have a pro forma, I think it goes right back to what I just said before. You can't put too many units in there because the debt coverage ratio wouldn't apply, wouldn't work. With 2 to 3 units, it works.
So that's what you'd go ahead and finance, a building
Yes.
with 2 to 3 units
Right.
of affordable, and you'd
Yeah.
repeat that 10 times?
Yeah, like that spreadsheet that I sent with with the distribution between the buildings. And it has, building 1 is 2, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 3, 5 is 2, 6 is 2, 7 is 2, 8 is 3, 3 and 2. The way the city's ordinance is drafted, you would be loading most of the units in the first 8 buildings. When leaving, and also not allowing for any financing until over $30 million is spent. That wouldn't be possible to build a project. Because if there's too much risk, there's no lender in the world that would do that.
right, and again, I applaud the approach. I like the table. This statement, and maybe it's irrelevant, maybe I'm flogging a dead horse here, but it seems to me that the scenario could be that none are put in the first buildings and they all are crammed into the latter ones.
That won't be allowed.
That won't be allowed?
No.
Okay.
Because when the subdivision plat is recorded, those deed restrictions will be made. And so that will memorialize which buildings will have 2, which buildings will have 3, as per that table. So when the subdivision is recorded, those deed restrictions will be made, obligating them to that plan.
Okay, so maybe this sentence we can just ignore.
I think so.
I think the sentence further substantiates the applicant's proposal to distribute the affordable units evenly among them. I don't know if it's phased, but typically that would be a HUD requirement, so that it meets the debt coverage ratio. So I don't see where the conflict is personally.
Okay.
And so are
You're a
you,
banker and I'm not.
if the plat goes through and you have 10 building lots, are you going to be selling those lots?
No. Well, they need to be, you know,
I understand financing needs to be on individual lots, and that's why you're
Right.
carving up a site. But
Yeah.
but my question is, will you sell those lots?
I'm not selling the lots, I'm building the project.
Okay. Russell?
Yeah, Robert, thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome.
I understand that there is potentially a 90-day wait period from the county to get the lot line adjustment. There's a number of, is that correct, from what you said
Well,
earlier?
they said it could be 90 days. But, you know, and it's a type 1 application, which is the most simplest form. It checks all the boxes for the application, and, you know, it should go through in a day, but this is, you know, government.
Yep, understood, and let's hope best case scenario that they're able to push that through quickly.
Yeah.
There's a number of other conditions here, 3 through 7, in the staff report, and that stuff all has to be done before council, I believe, has the first or second reading here. Do you see any problem getting any of those other conditions done in the amount of time that it takes from this to go from us to council?
And which conditions are those?
So there's An original signed copy of the consent to annexation, an original,
That's done.
an original copy of the indebtedness of special districts. I believe that's to Rogue Valley Sewer System. The deed restriction agreement for future development, and the deed restriction for utility infrastructure and street frontage improvements.
Yes.
Okay. Just one more quick question, Robert, while I've got you. You've got a lot more people living in that development than parking spots. How are you planning on allocating parking spots to the residents?
To residents that need it for parking, be the first criteria. If a car doesn't, if there's no one with a car, they can't have a spot. I really, it's a hard one to answer, because if we're trying to discourage the use of cars and generate clean air, much of the ordinances, many of the laws, everything, the CFAC regulations are all written. The city's designing the whole entire city to encourage more busing, which means more restrictions on cars, reductions in parking. I think it's what we're talking about, right, as a movement to use busing and other means, which is biking, walking, and busing. So some of the things that we're doing here is not only encouraging that by no parking, but also we have multimodal paths. We're talking just $5 million just in multimodal transportation, so the sidewalks and paths, transit plaza, bus pull-out lanes, bus stops, crosswalks, rapid flashing beacons. We have 2 bikes, parking spaces for each unit that's covered. We've got charging stations under each one. We have a bus pass program with RPTD, which we will be providing free transportation, unlimited, to all the residents. So I'll be getting there's a letter in the planning staff from Page West offering the program to me, which is a sliding scale of $0 to $10 per unit per person, because they're trying to encourage rapid transit too. So I think what we're doing is trying to encourage more of not using a car, but still having something there for people with cars. I have done some reading that these are successfully happening, even though people want to have cars. And so we're doing what's basically is being created throughout the state and the country. So I'm not trying to get everybody in there that has a car. We're trying to get everybody in there that need not use a car, and I think that's reflected in the plan.
Thanks for taking my questions, Robert. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Eric?
Hey, Robert. I like this project a lot. We approved it once before, so hopefully this time you get the ball across the goal line with, in case it goes lube or something. But I just want to touch on what Russell was asking and make sure that you're not asking for anything else. The 90-day maximum that you need to do the lot line adjustment, are you asking for any extension on your application or anything like that?
Well, no, what I'm saying is I will lean into an extension if that's what staff and we all need, think we need. So we don't bump up against the problem where the lot line adjustment isn't done and we have to record an annexation. So I'm not asking for 90 days. I'm just kind of offering that out there. If, you know, if we need to kind of drag our feet or, you know, stretch out the hearings and moving into to the city council, I'm not in a rush. So I can't put a date period on it other than to say that, yes, we will, you know, lay down or stand down if we need to wait. However you want to call that, you know, whatever that is.
I can respond to the question in terms of typically this commission is looking at the 120-day shot clock in terms of making a final determination on an application. Because this is an annexation, it is a legislative change, and as such, that shot clock does not apply. Appreciate Mr. Kendrick's patience on this. We did schedule the council meeting for first reading and review of the application for August 5th. And so our hope is that the county can complete the the boundary line adjustment by that time. But even if they don't, one of the recommended conditions of approval presented to you for tonight for consideration is that condition number 3 that Commissioner Phillips referenced, that a legal description of the properties to be included in the annexation prepared by a registered professional land surveyor be provided. The boundary shall be surveyed and monumented as required by statute subsequent to the City Council approval of the proposed annexation. So I think that affords the applicant the ability to do the same monumentation that would be needed for the boundary line adjustment and present that to both the county and to the city to satisfy this criteria, even preceding the county's approval of the boundary line adjustment. Obviously, the boundary line adjustment being completed before the final recording of the survey with the county would be necessary, but I don't believe it's absolutely necessary before the council hearing.
Thanks, Brandon.
Anybody have any other questions? Thank you very much. We will move on to public comments, and there's one here from Echo Fields. Want to come forward and give us your opinions?
Let's see. Is there a trick to turning this on so that folks hear it at home? You can hear it? Okay. So I'm just here on behalf of myself, not on behalf of any other organization. I'm not connected to this project in any personal way, you know, other than having paid attention to it since, gosh, it seems like 2021 even. It's been a long time. I'm really encouraged to see a lot of the changes compared to the last time Bob presented it. I like having all one-bedroom units. I think that's awesome. It meets some of our goals for around inclusionary zoning to have those units spread throughout all 10 buildings. That makes me really happy as a housing policy nerd to see that. Having 500 square feet is a better size. I know an earlier iteration of this project had some micro studios that seemed really too small to me. So I'm glad to see the larger square footage, smaller footprint of the project. I know it's taken just a horrendously long time, but it's a great lesson for the community in why we can't just wave a magic wand and get affordable housing, affordable for at least some portion of the community as quickly as we would like it. So among the city goals around housing is to have broader diversity and types of housing for all income levels. This project will probably not meet the needs of the most low-income folks, making 30% of AMI. But the 80% AMI target is a step forward in the right direction. So I'm glad to see that. And I also live on the very far north end of Ashland. I'm on Glen Street. I travel that stretch of road a lot. I see a lot of people trying to walk on where there are no sidewalks from that very far end of North Main, in the 1100 block at the very far end of North Main, walking all the way down towards Butler Ford and Dutch Bros, and it's a dangerous place to walk. And so this project really will benefit the community as a whole. I was glad to see that in the application packet. I didn't get through all 600 pages of your packet tonight, but I did read a good chunk of it. So I just wanted to speak in support of the project. I think it moves us in the right direction to making sure that that Ashland stays vital, that we are not losing population, but actually maintaining it and encouraging a broader diversity of folks moving into the area. So yeah, I'm happy to see it too. I hope it works. It's going to take a while. I know. It's hard to be patient. So thanks to everybody, Bob, Planning Commission, everybody. It's been a long haul. That's all.
Thank you very much for those comments. Does the applicant have anything to rebut?
No, I agree with Echo. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions by commissioners? No? Okay, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing and close the record. And we're into deliberations. Any discussion or comments about what's being proposed?
Chair, I would just suggest that it's a good project, and I enjoyed getting a chance to learn more about it.
Thank you. Russ?
Thank you, Chair Werner. I just ask what we have on the table right now for a change in conditions. I know that there were a few floating around, and if we could just get a tally on what those are right now, that would be fantastic.
Aaron?
So Chair Ferner provided us with some proposed edits. Mostly they are not substantive. Some of them deal with a little bit of duplication. And Lisa, Chair, pardon me, I don't want to mischaracterize your edits, but I feel that we can incorporate them into findings and bring those back to you for the next hearing. I felt like most of your edits were not substantive to the point that they need to be discussed in detail, as they dealt with removal of certain words, apostrophes, and certain duplications. So I feel confident with her input, we can bring back to you what is effectively the same set of conditions of approval, but have been just dressed up a little bit.
In fewer words.
In fewer words.
In fewer words, that's great. Yeah, I agree with you, yes. I did have a question about do we need to rewrite the condition that says, or do we need a condition that says something about the Anderson Auto Body property extending into the right-of-way that you mentioned?
Yes, I need to give that some thought because some of that information just came to me today.
Okay.
But yes, there should be a condition of approval that addresses the fact that Anderson Auto Body's property goes further into the highway right-of-way that isn't shown on the civils, and so that should be included as a condition of approval.
Okay. And then there was also mention of 26-foot standard for fire access and changing the drawings to reflect that?
Correct. Drives C and D need to go from 24 to 26.
And what needs to go to?
They're labeled drives C and D on the
yes.
site plan, and this was a question that Russell provided us earlier. And again, the project engineer indicated that it wouldn't be a problem to widen those to 26 to accommodate that standard.
Right. And how do you want to memorialize that in the conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we want to say that the lot line adjustment will be done prior to city council first reading?
And that's a deliberation question if you feel that that's necessary.
I don't know if it needs to be done by first reading or by approval as proposed, but
Okay, well, second reading,
Did you say first reading was August something?
August 5th?
Yeah, first reading
Okay,
is
so
scheduled
it
for
should-
August
It
5th.
should be done. Yeah, it's plenty of time. Yeah, so we said.
Um,
Was the schedule included in the conditions, the schedule of low income, or not low income, but affordable housing that Robert just presented?
Yes, that is in the record and will be also included as a condition of approval of exactly which buildings have the 3 units.
Okay.
So we would need a motion from the commission to recommend inclusion of a motion that references the table for inclusion as a condition of approval.
Right, that wasn't in the previous staff recommendations.
No, we did not
Okay.
receive it until today,
Gotcha, thank you.
or yesterday. Yeah.
Okay, so somebody want to start with the idea of a motion?
I just had one thing I wanted to say, because I do think Russell made a very important point. So aspirationally, again, I kudos for how much this has changed and improved, I believe, since we saw it last. And appreciation for that, and appreciation for it, as you described, Mr. Kendrick, really trying to be something new and different relative to climate impact and the human behavioral changes required for that. Getting back to your question, I just would submit that the CCRs probably are going to play a very important role in managing a different kind of parking situation where one person doesn't put 3 cars in 3 spaces for their 500 square foot unit, or park a car there permanently, or their trailer. So, but that's all part of the social experiment, I think, that's going on here. And I personally believe it will be wonderful to see.
Well, I will second what Susan has said. Commissioner McCracken Jen has said. I think it's a vastly improved project, and I think it's going to be very good when it gets laid out. I think you've taken a lot of things into consideration over the years, and I want to thank you for that, because I think the improvements are showing, and that's good. And I especially like the idea that the low-income units are scattered throughout the site. That's a very good, and we need to change our ordinance to allow that. Russell?
I'd like to make a motion recommending that the city council approve the annexation.
Actually, it's a motion to recommend for the planning commission to recommend approval to the city council.
Yes. I would like to recommend that the planning commission
Recommend approval.
recommend approval of the annexation to city council
And
with the staff included conditions, including, should have written these down,
Anderson Auto Body
the Anderson Auto Body
right-of-way issue
right-of-way
addressed.
issue
And civil improvements.
and civil improvements.
Drive C and D,
Drive C and D, 26 feet,
property line adjustment being completed.
the property line adjustment being completed,
And then
and inclusion of the schedule of affordable housing. Thanks, guys.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve, to recommend to the city council that they approve the project. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Wait a minute, let me have Jerry do a roll call.
Phillips,
Aye.
Perkinson,
Aye.
Marr,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Jen,
McCracken, Jen?
McCracken Jen, sorry,
Aye.
Werner.
Aye. Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much for being here tonight and giving us your explanation and description of the project. I hope you get it up and running soon.
I do too. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, we will move on to our next item, which is open discussion. Anybody have anything to discuss, to bring up to the planning commission? Okay, hearing nothing there, how about a motion to adjourn? Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved, has it been seconded?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, meeting's adjourned.
All right. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, bye Greg.